Joey.
Thank you, Jessica. How do I sound? Am I too loud? Everything sound good, Jessica?
You're good.
All right, excellent. All right, thank you everybody for joining today. As Jessica said, the theme of today is going to be around social networking and social engineering. Before I start though, I do want to point out kind of a warning here that if you think that, well, I'm in a government agency for you government people, or if you feel like that you don't have a Facebook account or LinkedIn account and that this may not apply to you, the talk will have a lot around Facebook and LinkedIn, particularly because a penetration test that a colleague, Amar Lakhani, and myself performed use those as the attack vectors for a particular target. However, that doesn't really mean that that's the only social media or social engineering attacks that are out there. So let's say that you are a government agency, you completely don't allow social media. This talk still applies to you. And some examples are DOJ, if they manage police intel, what would stop a adversary from creating a fake police department and try to abstract information that way? Or you see in a lot of movies where people dress up like they're firefighters and pull the fire alarm to get inside the building, or vice versa. Anything from assassination, somebody gets injured, they're in the hospital, they're in a quarantine area, and the criminal dresses up like a nurse or something and goes in. There's many different forms. I'll give you one that applies to anybody. And pretty much if you hire people, what would stop somebody from just taking a job and on your dime pretty much going in and taking intel and then leaving? So when it comes to the threat avenue here, yeah, we'll be talking a lot about Facebook, and we'll be talking a lot about LinkedIn and social media that way, but even if you don't allow those particular vectors, there are other ways that people can social engineer. Hey, Jessica, I think I lost the presentation. Thank you. All right, great, thank you. Can you see it? We good? Okay. So just to kick things off, to get you thinking about what I'm talking about here, the question comes into, who are your cyber friends? And what I mean by that is, who are people that you interact with online that you've never met? And that's going to kind of lead into some of the pen test work that was done. But the idea of it is, if somebody says they're a new hire and they're a remote employee, or you work in a large agency and people are emailing you asking for information, and you haven't actually met these people, how do you know this person is for real, if you will? I'll give the example from like dating hotlines. You see something like Josephina, attractive female, you're talking to her for a while, you think things are jiving. But how do you know until you actually go on that first date that Josephina really isn't Joseph? Hey, Jessica, I'm going to share my my screen rather than go this route, if that's okay. Apparently the slides aren't doing any of the animations. Is that okay? You can pass
Indeed,
the ball.
Sorry. We are having a couple technical issues this morning. We apologize for the inconvenience.
Yeah. Just pass the ball and I'll share my desktop. I noticed that then the animations are working here. All right. Can you please pass the ball? Okay, well, I guess we're going to have to move on here. So, in the automation that's supposed to happen, I guess I'll just kind of have to mentally talk through since some of the things aren't working here. Pretty much what was supposed to happen here is Josephina was supposed to be a male named Joseph. And the idea of it is until you actually meet somebody, you really don't know who they are and basically if they're for real. Jessica, next slide, please. Thanks. And yeah, see, Jessica, like I'm saying, there's information under that that's supposed to be seen. But all right, fine, I'll just talk through it. All right, so in this slide, the idea is supposed to be that there's some stats there that are interesting. The first stat there is if you look at like online usage, if you will, they're saying, these stats are actually kind of old. This is from a presentation I did early last year. But the first stat that's supposed to be presented here is that 1 in 5 couples basically are met online, and 1 in 5 divorces are caused by Facebook. And I'm a true living of that stat. I met my wife when he hurt me, so yeah, 1 in 5 couples, it's actually true. And the stat with the 1 in 5 divorces is actually kind of funny as well. I remember being out with some colleagues, and they're like, hey, we're going to go out to an event late at night, and they told their wife that they're going to be doing a work event, and somebody took a picture and tagged them on Facebook, and obviously the person's wife is friends with them on Facebook, so when the tag came up with their name, had their picture right there, boom, they're busted. The second stat is about Facebook, and just in general, some of the stats are that 11, probably more now, % of the population of Earth, the people there have Facebook accounts. If Facebook was a country, it'd be the third largest country in the world, and there are more Facebook accounts than automobiles. So, you know, pretty much the concept is, if you're in the IT industry, if you're in a business, most likely somebody in your business has a Facebook account. And the reason the ridiculous picture here, Lady Gaga, is according to stats last year, there was more than 64 million tweets per day. And what that means is people are tweeting, which to me, I'm not a tweeter, but people who do tweet, it's like typically random thoughts. So like, hey, I'm going to have breakfast. My breakfast is good. Or I have heartburn right now, and they're just tweeting their random thoughts. And actually, Lady Gaga has more followers than the president. So the leader of our country, people care more about this person, Lady Gaga's random thoughts, than the leader of our country. And that to me is kind of disturbing. So on that note, you start to think about, you know, what is your digital identity? And what I mean by that is, you know, when you start interacting online, you start basically going to social media websites, bank accounts, etc., even email, everything that's online starts to have metadata and starts to accumulate who you are. If I'm doing a pen test, even if I'm going to do reconnaissance on a website, I can go to like go back and machine and basically look at the first website you ever created to your website you have up right now and start to basically gather intel on you. So as you're doing things online, you start to kind of create this what's called digital identity, and you start to wonder, well, what is this digital identity and how can it be used against you? And that's kind of what sprawled this very popular black hat conversation that happened around 2009 and 2010. And that's Robin Sage presentation. I'm not sure if who tends black hat and if you saw that, but what it was is basically a group of guys created a fake person and attacked just general federal military people with the goal of trying to extract intel from the government. And I think Robin Sage was a dancer, a late night dancer, and they gave her an IT background and just went ahead and then gathered this information and then presented it live in front of the military and completely upset everybody. And it was cool and it was funny, but it really brought up a question of what is the real threat from social media. So yeah, some people were embarrassed because there were dinner dates with commanders and et cetera, but what is the real threat? And that kind of grew into this concept where my colleague and I are like, well, what if we actually use social media as an actual attack vector? What if we actually target a particular agency and actually launch real attacks? So what we mean is actually break into systems, like do the full-blown pen test type attack, but do it just through social media. And so the idea was, well, let's take the Robin Sage concept and like take it to the next level. So what we did was we created Emily Williams. Just like Robin Sage, we made her a attractive mid to late 20-year-old female, gave her an IT background. If you really did the math on her, it was like she's 18 when she graduated from college and then worked 10 years in the IT industry, so not really real, but people probably weren't figuring that out. And basically said, all right, well, we're going to give her this IT background, and then we're going to basically make her a new employee at this target company, and then from there, start to actually capture information and see how far we can take this thing. So to do that, step one was, well, we got to first, and you can't see some of the stats under that, but step one is, Jessica, I'll just drive, thanks. You got to basically give her friends. So first off, to create this person, we needed to give her a friend background so she doesn't go out to Target with like 2 friends and says, hey, I'm a new hire, be my friend. Obviously, people wouldn't want to do that. So step one was establish kind of a baseline of friends. So the stats show that within the first hour, we had like 20 friends. Within the first day, we had a few hundred friends. So it only took us really a day to get enough friends to really start going after the target audience. Basically, what we did was we said, all right, well, there's no risk there. If I go after, so I actually chose my friends. I picked up my friends. And if somebody says, you know, you only have 3 friends, who are you? No big deal. But then once we hit that good solid number, we want to start friending with low-level people within the target agency. So basically, sales people, not making fun of sales people, not saying they're low level, but there's no risk if they say no. But the goal would be is to try to figure out who's in help desk, who's in higher positions, who's in HR, and kind of work our way up that way. By the end of the pen test, we had 170 employees that were friends with us. We had the hiring manager, if this person actually took this role, the marketing people, HR, human resources, everybody that basically which should know this person doesn't exist, we're friends with this person. We had also looked at what this company does business-wise. So they run like Cisco and McAfee, and they run different technologies. So started basically friending the partner companies and had over 100 of the partner companies as well. And some interesting things where you see a notification of being endorsed. Within the first hour of actually friending the target people, they started endorsing our skill sets. So we thought that was really funny. It's like, you know, it just shows how great endorsing was. We're like, wow, we don't even have to like fake that. People are doing that for us. So we had people endorsing her. Actually, what was really funny is a lot of the partner companies started trying to hire her. So within the first day, we started friending people from the organization. We said we just started the company, and right away, people were like, hey, you come work for us. Well, how much are they paying you? We'll pay you more. So we thought that was pretty fun. And actually, when we launched this, we were at a conference, and people happened to be at the same conference. It was like, hey, I want to interview you right now. So we were like, yeah, meet us at booth 15. And we were like at booth 20, watching the person wander around, look for her. And then we were like hitting on LinkedIn, hey, I'm going to be late. And, oh, hey, I can't make that meeting right now. And then eventually we just got the guy tired and he just gave him an offer. So it was pretty fun. So if you really think about, this actually is a screenshot here of a conversation with that guy. So, you know, this is me trying to talk like a mid to late 20-year-old female. So I'm like, oh, you know, you're so sweet and everything. Well, this person was trying to get a phone interview and then a face-to-face interview. We just kept avoiding it and kept complimenting the guy, and eventually we just got the job offer. So there was, I think, 4 or 5 job offers in total, but he was getting a lot of offers just based on her profile, which was interesting. So what do we do? I mean, all that is cool, and I'll tell you right now, in the end, just based on using social media, we ended up actually figuring out, all right, this person's in charge of issuing laptops. Then that's the person's boss. Figured out that person's boss, name dropped that to the other person and said, hey, actually, I'm still employed, but I'm starting in 2 weeks, but I want to start working early. Can you get me a laptop and Salesforce access? And actually got a phone, I got a computer mailed to us with access, with full VPN access. So we already won at this point. But again, we wanted to test the concept of, well, how far can we take this? So even though just using social media we won, we wanted to say, well, what else can we do with this? So, you know, up until now, what we've done is we've created the fake Facebook, the fake LinkedIn person. We've started basically social engineering our way up the food chain and becoming friends with people and establishing conversations with people. And with just doing that, we captured everything we needed. But then we took it to the next step, which is now we're going to actually launch a tax. So what we did was we basically created fake Christmas cards, because this was done around wintertime of last year, and put those Christmas cards up on Facebook. And the idea would be is if you click the Christmas card, you would see a Christmas card, if you will, that does something. And unfortunately, you're not going to be able to see it, but the automation should move aside. And yeah, you're not going to be able to see it, Jessica. But basically, there's a screenshot of a beef attack. So what happens is the end user sees this, but on our side, we actually see your browser, see what type of browser that you have, and basically look for known vulnerabilities in that browser. And then within that browser, if we're able to find vulnerabilities, we are given the ability to launch scripts. So for example, scripts like screen capture, script like keylogger, we can make funny sounds in your computer. So again, you don't have the screenshot here. Maybe at the end I'll open up Beef and show it to you. But basically, it's a browser vulnerability tool. It hooks a browser, so it doesn't matter if you go offline. So if you click the Christmas card and then like sign off, when you sign back on, Beep actually shows that the system is communicating again, and we're able to once again to launch all of the scripts as long as you don't patch that vulnerability in the browser. I'm going to point out a couple things. One, this is actually a very ethical way of breaking into people's computers. The reason why I say ethical is we're just doing browser hijacking. We're not actually like using malware or actually doing anything like to harm a system. But I'll tell you now, if this is a real malicious user, if I was going to really do this, I'd probably use malware. I'd probably use like Black Hole, which is a very known malware distribution botnet system that basically I can put like rootkits on computers and then make it almost, you have to pretty much wipe the system or boost the computer before you can get it off, and you automatically also launch this stuff. So there's two things. One, you had to actually click the Christmas card, and two, we had to actually choose to launch the attack manually. Real attackers, if they're using Black Hole, it would just automatically own you. So like, that's, if you go to like you're looking for music, or movies online, and somebody, you see your pop-ups, and your system is automatically owned. That's typically how it's done. Typically, they just auto-own you regardless, and then you're part of like a botnet, and then from there they can control you. We were a little more ethical because, again, we're doing a pen test, so we were using Beef. And for those that want to see more about Beef, I have a link to my blog, which I'll have at the end of this presentation. But basically, in my blog, I talk about how you download Backtrack, which is free, how to set up a Beef server in 600 words or less, and pretty much you can do the exact same attack we did. So it's not that complicated. So, really, what is, if you look at the kill chain, if you will, or what we did to break into this particular target, and for those that don't understand the kill chain concept, I've never heard that term kill chain, that's basically the terminology for breaking into a network, if you will, and stealing data. So what does an attacker do from the very beginning of reconnaissance research to the very end of taking data off the network? And if you really look at the social engineering kill chain, basically it's creating a fake person or more or less social engineering your way into a customer and then, or target, and then from there basically figuring out who are the right people, becoming friends with their friends, and then eventually becoming friends with those people and getting yourself basically in line with the right people, and then from there getting access to the network. Now, again, I'm going to point out that game was over before we even launched any real attacks. We had people just giving us stuff. But, however you get in there, whether you put on a suit and walk in the door, or if you social engineer and do Facebook attacks like we did, once you get access, you typically then establish a foothold. What I mean by that is once an attacker gets into the network, they then basically do like netcat tunnels back out. They basically put out multiple ways to get back in the network in the event that somebody closes down their initial way to get in the network. And then finally, you take data. Jessica, what are you doing? Okay, there you go. Cool. Oh, great. That's the Beef server. Thank you. So that's actually a screenshot of the Beef server. So when I was talking about the Beef SQL injection, when you see the Christmas card in the background, this is what we see. And what's interesting is if you look at the offline browsers, those are systems that we initially hooked, but then they basically went offline. But if they come back online, then we can go back and launch our scripts again. So you can see that those are examples of just different things that you can do. Next slide. All right. So anyways, with the kill chain, to kind of close that out, the idea of it is you basically establish a foothold. Once you're there, put down your tunnels to get back into the network, and then take data. So what were the lessons learned? Why do we do this? And what does Emily teach us? A couple things. One, identity has a value to it. So the more that you're online, the more things you do online, there's actually a tangible value to that. So if you say that you are a help desk, you could be a target. There's value to basically what you have online. You should basically be mindful of that. Second thing is that humans are naturally trusting. I'll tell you now that a lot of pen test work done years ago, the most dangerous weapon was a suit. If you put on a suit and you walk around and just look lost, people will help you. People naturally are trusting. I have a thing here I'll show you here in a minute, but the person that gave us the computer and everything, they're naturally wanting to help us out. Hey, you're a new employee? Sure, I'll give you access to Salesforce. Sure, I'll give you access to things. If you get a salesperson, I forgot my password, I need access, or this person's, who I talk to, people are naturally trusting. And hackers know this, and attackers know this, and they will take advantage of that. One thing that's taught us as well is people use the same passwords for everything. That's really funny, actually. Like, for example, we would use beef, and we would steal like like a Farmsville password. And surprisingly enough, that Farmsville password was the exact same password for their VPN, exact same password for their bank account, the exact same password for their other means. So we just found that in a lot of cases, people use the same passwords, or to be very clever, use a different variation, but it's pretty much the same password. So they'll, instead of like an animal, they'll use a different animal, or they'll do 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1, or some other combination. So once we steal 1 or 2 passwords for something low level, and we drop it in John the Ripper, and basically say automate like variations of that, it breaks within 10 seconds. So surprisingly enough, people use the same passwords. We definitely found that in those accounts that we compromised. One thing Emily teaches us is that attractive women, definitely in a male-dominated industry, can get away with a lot of things. And the joke of that is, if this was John in his 50s, probably would have got away with a lot of stuff, but there were certain cases, especially on the interview side of the house, where people were just giving us things or just bypassing a lot of the typical protocols because we feel like it was an attractive 28-year-old woman. Emily teaches us that common security solutions cannot defend against this. I'm going to talk about some means to defend at the end of the presentation, but things like firewalls, IPSs, content filters. I mean, yeah, some of the browser stuff may get caught, but what if we're attacking like a home user computer, or once we get a password and we try that against a VPN and get inside? I mean, even content filters and email security, a lot of the general security products that most people have are not going to stop this type of attack. This is pretty much attacking people, and people are always going to be the weakest link. And other than education, there really isn't a way to patch a person. Yeah, actually, she just showed something here. So this is an example of the trusting thing. So we were basically talking to the person that would, and again, this person should have known better that this person doesn't really exist, but it's, hey, can you get us a computer right now? Can you get us access to certain things? And after going back and forth, eventually we were offered a tour of the building, and here's pretty much everything you need to get started, again, communicating through LinkedIn. Next one, thanks. Go back for a second, please. Thanks. There's a couple other things that Emily teaches us. The two final points is, one, that social engineering can definitely impact your business. So like Robin Sage, it was about embarrassing some people, getting some data. In our scenario, we actually completely compromised the target. I mean, if we really wanted to, if we were malicious enough, we could do whatever we want. So this threat vector is a serious threat vector. And actually, the Verizon report just came out a few days ago, and it actually shows a huge rise in social. They could just call it social in there, but that's pretty much what they mean is this attack vector. It's on the rise, even though malware and some of the phishing and some of the old classics are still the highest. And finally, there isn't a silver bullet to fix this. There are some good tools, but you can't go buy one thing to stop this. Again, it's an interesting attack vector. Next slide. All right, so there's some interesting good news and bad news. The good news is people are actually getting more aware of things. So when we initially created Emily and started befriending people, this is in the beginning, we found some conversations of people questioning who she is and actually telling their friends to watch out for her. So to me, that felt really good. The people were asking. I'll say, though, next one, that also what was pretty funny is some people were just really gullible. And this is an example. I'm going to teach you right now a really quick way to social engineer somebody. In this particular use case, this person popped up, do I know you? So when we friended them on Facebook. And first thing I did was I went to their job profile, looked at their first job, and it said Hungry Howie's Pizza. And it was like 8 or 10 years ago. So I was like, hey, I remember you from the Hungry Howie days. And right away we started getting to gain trust. But then we're like, well, that's cool, but I want to own this person. So then I went and clicked the same job, and because the job you can click, and it showed that he had 5 other friends that worked the same job at the same time. So then I showed it to friend Derek and said, click Derek, and it showed that Derek was living currently in New York City. So then I was like, oh, by the way, I ran into Derek in New York. And at that point, and also the person listed his hometown as B-Town. So I also said, ran to, somebody in B-Town. I used the same terms B-Town as he used on his Facebook profile. And that was it. After I did that, if I wanted this person to be an asset for me, I can ask the person to do whatever. I had full trust as if this person was like best friends with this person. Next slide. So what are some countermeasures, to stop somebody like me doing what I just showed how to do there? First off, you should question suspicious behavior. And second, more importantly, you should forward any questionable stuff to HR. I'll tell you now, you're not going to offend anybody these days if you say, do I really know you, or how do I know you, or prove yourself. I really doubt anybody's going to get really mad at that. But yet people seem to be really timid about doing that. I'll give you, this target that we attacked. There was somebody that was very, very, very high up in the target, and I'm talking the executive board level. And surprisingly enough, a lot of the very technical and people you think that would have not been fooled or fooled easily, or this particular person, props to this person, when they got the invite, the first step was they put up their Cisco phone, looked for Emily's name in a directory, didn't see her name, and basically denied the friend request. And that we thought was really cool that, somebody who typically you wouldn't think would be a technical type person made that connection of, well, I should verify this before I actually do this. So questioning people and questioning behavior is actually a really good thing and something we highly recommend. Other thing is be aware of what's public. Like, I don't know, I recommend everybody here to go back to their own Facebook and LinkedIn account and actually read your own profile and just remember that this stuff is public. As I showed in that B-Town example where I pulled the guy's first job and the first language and everything, I basically used that against the person to gain trust. And, if you have something like, hey, my job title is this, or your monster resume, if that's out there, and you talk about certain things, that information can be used against you. One thing I see a lot that's very common with my friends on Facebook that are IT related, they'll be like, yeah, working late today, updating the server, or worked over the weekend and updating my, or studying up on VMware or whatever. That information, if somebody is trying to target you, they're going to be like, okay, well, this person obviously deals with this type of system. This is their maintenance window because they did it during this time, et cetera, et cetera. That information, again, can be used against you. So be aware of what you put that's public. And, that goes with the fourth one. Also, don't share this information on social media. Don't tweet about this kind of stuff. But just be in general, know what you put that's public. If you put down yourself as being a part of recruiting or being a part of like certain sales organization, you can become a target because people will then say, oh, well, this person has this type of power. How can I basically make this person my asset? Another thing is use strong passwords and don't use the same password for everything. So like, again, don't use the same password for your PlayStation that you use for your VPN. Those that know PlayStation was compromised like multiple times over. One, password rule that I tell a lot of friends and family, my wife, I make her do this, is don't use real words. So like, there's a very popular program, John the Ripper, that like uses dictionaries, and basically if you think you're clever by using special characters, so instead of an S, use a money sign, that doesn't matter. John the Ripper will also take special characters and try those in replacement of typical letters as well. Best practice for creating a password is come up with like a sentence that you memorize. So rather than memorizing a word, memorize like a long sentence like Jessica doesn't know how to use WebEx, and use the first letter from like every word. So Jessica, J, doesn't, D, no, K, and like basically it becomes a random looking password, but it's easy to memorize because after seeing Jessica on WebEx, I'll always know that she doesn't know how to use WebEx, so I can always remember that sentence. And then, if you want to throw in some numbers and stuff as well, that's fine. But it's a lot stronger password, and most likely an automated tool other than brute forcing won't be able to actually figure that out. So my suggestion is to you is to do something like that. And then more importantly, don't use the same password for work stuff, for home stuff. So at least, if somebody compromises one, there's no formula as well that they can take and say, oh, well, this person likes using animals, or his characters are typically 6 or 7 characters. It becomes completely random. So even if they do compromise one of your passwords, they can't use that against you for other passwords. Another one is don't share work devices. So like if you're going to use Facebook, That's fine if it's a work computer, but if that computer also touches like routers and switches for configuration, then that particular system shouldn't touch social media, especially the more sensitive the machine. So like if I do a browser SQL injection, yeah, I can get a lot of information from you, but at least that particular machine isn't being owned with a botnet or something, and then I can use it as a jumping point. So ideally, try to again, separate work from home when it comes to these systems. Next slide. So why is a guy from Landcope, which by the way I started a few months ago, so this work was before Landcope, but why is a guy from Landcope talking about social engineering and pen testing and insider threat, if you will? Well, the one thing that I will point out that brought me over to Landcope is the idea of being able to catch things like insider threats and doing basically combating this type of insider attack and security. So one thing that Landcope can do that was pretty interesting as I came over is this whole idea of profile on the network. So Landcope basically turns routers, switches, pretty much any networking device, and gives it the ability to use what's called NetFlow to basically get intelligence about behavior on the network. So in a sense, what Landcope can do is turn the entire network over into a large IPS or IDS, if you will. So unlike traditional security tools, like I talked about the firewall IPS, that like you have to cross that bounds, if you will, or you have to basically attack from the outside or be in an email, etc. The entire network becomes basically a tool to actually look for insider threats. Next slide. So the idea of it is if when you talk about like kill chain perspective, if the target had Landcope running today, we would have probably got caught, and I'll explain why. One, the recon activity we were doing would have set off a lot of alarms, meaning that like if I would VPN into the network as an authorized user from account credentials that I stole, the person would be like, let's say Jessica in marketing. Why would Jessica be touching an email server, or why would Jessica be scanning subnets? The recon activity that we would have done from these authorized accounts would be like, well, somebody in sales obviously doesn't know how to use WebEx. They're definitely not technical enough to be doing like a scan against a network or something like that. This is not the right type of behavior. And it would basically rise what's called the CI value, but basically the concerned index, and make this person stand out as a possible threat. Other things that we did inside was is plant unauthorized tunnels out of the network. That would also set off alarms right away. So why is there's these tunnels, or why is this traffic being tunneled through unauthorized ports or over authorized port, but it's unauthorized tunneling? That would have set off alarms as well. Other insider threat things, obviously if you steal data, if you take like a large amount of data and it's somebody in marketing, why is this person sending data to Dropbox for the first time? Maybe it's okay, maybe it's not. These different behaviors would ideally set off alarms, and earlier in the kill chain, if you will, would have probably called us. Because again, we're doing basically using authorized accounts, we're inside, but we're doing bad things from inside, or more abnormal things. Next slide. So, some examples are, like, again, if I were to use like a black hole server, that would be using more of like a botnet known way. But like if Gloria's Android phone, for example, talked to a known botnet, that would set off an alarm, or in a sense just talk out of the network in an obscure way, that would set off an alarm. Next. Imagine like an insider threat, like a spreading, if you will. So if a system gets compromised and that system starts scanning a subnet and then it finds a vulnerable system, compromises that. So you see the purple compromise the green, and the green now scanning a subnet, and that green compromise another one, You can actually watch the malware spread to the network. Again, this is kind of a black hole, like a more real-world scenario, not like a browser SQL injection. But any internal spreading type behavior, or just us, doing recon, just doing scans, would create like a map like this. It would obviously set off alarms. Next one, data loss. So like for the first time, if somebody in marketing set off a lot of data, that would set off alarms. And maybe it's okay, but if it's not, at least you have an alarm. So if it's top 10 things you should look at today, at least it's something you should look into. And I think some of the data that we could have taken off would probably set off alarms. Next one. And the final one is if, again, known botnets talks to any insider threat, that would set off an alarm, but you can also do things like micro honeypots and stuff. So if these systems are ever touched by somebody, so only admins to touch these systems, and if like a salesperson or if somebody low level touches these systems, set off an alarm. A lot of these are just some examples, but these are the ways that we would have gotten caught if there was an insider threat solution. And again, yeah, there's some SIMs out there that can trigger loud behavior, but if you do slow and moving reconnaissance, that's not really going to trigger anything. And you know, again, if you're social engineering your way and getting the right accounts, a lot of times, even with scanning type technology like an iRetina or something that's going to scan and look for vulnerable systems and look for malware or antivirus, it's usually the behavior that really sets off the triggers. It's not really like a signature, if you will. And this tool, based on behavior, would have probably caught us because that was pretty much the only thing that gave away our presence was our behavior inside the network. Next one. So the last thing I'll say is the idea of it is also to save you money. So like if you have a tool that's able to catch our reconnaissance earlier in the kill chain, if you will, then you don't have to deal with all the cost of, like, for example, if it was a black hole server, cleaning up all the malware afterwards, or you find out afterwards that some other party says, how's this data public, and you're already owned, and now you got to basically become the next RSA or VA and publicly deal with all that. There's a lot of money lost once you do get compromised and all the bad things happen. So ideally, if you can catch it early in the kill chain, so, hey, I see Jessica's system is doing bad things for the first time, let me go look into that and stop it earlier in the kill chain. You don't have to deal with the cleanup and the losses that are associated with being oh, next slide. So that's pretty much all I have. If you want to see more about LandCope,